Kylian Mbappé to face his former team for the first time. If you're Xabi Alonso, do you start him?
That's a really good question because you're not in charge. Florentino Perez is in charge and he probably wants Kylian Mbappé to play. It's a big call for Alonso. Garcia's done brilliantly and the sporting logic is probably let him come off the bench, make an impact. But at the same time, this is the red letter fixture of this tournament. From that point of view, there's probably a kind of business motive to say that Kiki has to start. But you're right, it's a big test of Alonso's authority.
We back like Joey Chestnut after a weekend in which the Club World Cup became a little bit like the Club Tropicana, where tickets are free. And PSG set up a semi-final showdown with Real Madrid. If only there was a tournament already when that could happen. And Chelsea won and were happy to be scored against. They face more Brazilian nuts in their semi-final gauntlet. But I'm burying the lead because as I live and breathe, live and in front of me, I can almost touch him. I can smell the aftershave wafting over here. And yes, it is her, the chocolate orange. Oh, it's amazing to see the Crown Prince of Harrogate in New York City. Joy to be with you, Mr. Rory Smith.
Harrogate, the United States, Rog.
I know it is. It's what it says on the sign when you cross from Brooklyn into Manhattan.
It's it's New York. I've been in Philly as well. It's a little American tour. I'm very excited.
Oh, mate, we are so blessed to have you. But how are you finding New York City, Rory Smith? I like to imagine you just like walking past taxis, slamming the hood, say, "Hey, I'm walking here."
That's all I've been doing on purpose to everybody. No, it's great. I was given J-Dubs, our producer, gave me some hints for a walking tour. So I walked, I think, 16 miles yesterday. He's an active man, this J-Dubs. So I'm slightly. My main observation of New York so far is that I'm quite stiff at all times.
Chafing.
Yeah, a lot of chafing. It's quite hot.
Yeah.
And my legs are tired. So yeah, I've walked the West Side Highway yesterday in the beating sunshine, blazing down on me.
God, that almost sounds like the beginning of a great Johnny Cash song.
There was a point where I felt
the West Side Highway.
I felt too British and had to sit in the shade for a bit. I had 4th of July in Philadelphia. That was nice. At one point, I didn't realise this, that JD Sports has gone international. The JD Sports being obviously a great British brand. And because it was July the 4th...
Great's doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It all got a bit American, so I went into JD Sports as a kind of substitute for the embassy.
Did you cry? Did you weep when you walked in and just like, oh my God, I miss you, England?
Just quite a lot of cheap sports gear made me feel at home. Yeah. It's been really good. And obviously
England used to stand for something. They used to have an empire. Now it's just piles of tat. It's just you're like this home.
High top trainers. That's what we do. That's Britain for me. And then 2 Club World Cup football matches, Rog.
Which we will talk about. Best thing you've eaten when they've been here?
Oh, that's a great question. I had in Reading Terminal Market. Thanks to the recommendations of the Men in Blazers World, the extended universe.
By the way, this man asked for Philadelphia recommendations. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
I got through like too much stuff shuts in Philly and maybe America more broadly on July the 4th. Open up. People want to eat. But I had some. I had, what was it? Vanilla. There was a lot of ingredients. Vanilla, cinnamon, challah French toast. And I didn't know which of those words was meant to go in which order.
Yeah.
So I thought I better eat it.
Yeah, challah.
It turns out, and it turns out it was delicious.
For someone who knows how to pronounce every single footballer, you're very bad at your breads. I gotta say, it's incredible to be with you. We are here. Who's counting? I think it's 338 days until the Men's World Cup kicks off. The Club World Cup is, you've called it the caffeinated football. It's the best thing we've got. I honestly have spent this week doing British television. I've been on Sky Sports. I went on Talk Sport. Everyone just wants to ask, is this a sign of how bad the World Cup's going to be? There's no audience. There's no crowd. The grass is terrible. It's too hot. As they're sitting there and like the city they're in is like 98 degrees. I'm like, what? It's actually cooler here than it is in England at the moment. But I digress. And yes, we got air conditioning. But I do want to know from you, where are you on your Club World Cup wonder? Because just to be clear, audience, the Club World Cup and the World Cup are going to be two completely different phenomenons. I won't bore you with the technicalities of the organising, but like cities are organising the actual Club World Cup. In Atlanta, they've had as much to do with what's happened in Mercedes-Benz as when, say, Celine Dion comes and does a gig there. They weren't responsible for the turf. They weren't responsible for ticket sales. They weren't responsible for anything. World Cup will be very different. It's been kind of hastily put together by FIFA, this tournament, a bit like we all had a classmate who didn't turn up for any lectures, then just tried to crash the exam by doing an all-night bender. That's how I think about it. But you are the apogee of Club World Cup optimists. So where are you now? Lord, the face. Where are you now, Mr. I'm so in. This is going to be great. Between 1 and 10. Where are you now? Now we're like at the semi-final, final countdown.
I'm like a 6 to 7, I think. So I think there are things that FIFA can learn from this tournament that they should apply to the World Cup. And I agree with you. Like the World Cup is a totally different order of thing. Just logically, because if you're a Brazilian who lives in the States, you will go and watch Brazil. But you might hate Palmeiras. They might be your enemy. Just because you're a Brazilian, you won't go and watch a Brazilian club team. But if you're Brazilian, you can get a ticket to a Brazil World Cup game, you're going to go. So it's a totally different order of thing. I think they have like cobbled it together. It does feel a bit like it's held together by like gaffer tape. If gaffer tape, sticky. What do you call gaffer tape in America?
We call it gaffer tape.
There you go.
It's named after Sam Allardyce.
It does feel, it feels like it's like a little bit jury rigged. But the concept to me holds. I think the idea of a global club tournament is a good one. Execution's not been great. But I kind of think that as we get into the semi-finals, Real Madrid PSG, that is a big football match. And speaking to Fran Garcia and Gonzalo Garcia, the two Real Madrid players who've kind of come through at this tournament and staked a claim, and also Thibaut Courtois, like they're very much of the view that Real Madrid should be thinking of itself as the best team in the world. This is their chance to have that official status. They're into it. They will mean something to them.
Are you just humble bragging about your time spent with them? Were they at the Reading Terminal Market with you?
They were having. I don't know why they were eating such a fatty breakfast, but they were. No. It was after the game at MetLife.
They were at Jim South Street TV. You're like, hey, Garcia brothers, are you jamming that cheesesteak down as the official meal of victory?
So I think it works. I think the concept holds, even if you don't like the fact that the main face of it has been
Speed.
I show Speed and Gianni Infantino.
Yeah. By the way, Speed is possibly the biggest winner of this Club World Cup, and God bless him in every regard. We will talk about the quarterfinals that have been, the semi-finals to come, but I do want to start by raising my first Michelob Ultra of the day in person, Raw. To being together in this time of chaos and, darkness. Football, honestly, has become all the more important for that sense of feeling and connectivity to being together. I don't take a second of it for granted. Indeed, we're going to be together a lot this week in person with you, I hope, GFOPs, because we are going to be live for both of the semi-finals in person at the Michelob Ultra Pitside Club. We can drink one or two of these beauties for both Club World Cup semi-finals, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 p.m, taking in all of the football. We'll be with a ton of special guests, including Friday, the majestic Clint Dempsey, who'll join us at 6 p.m. All of this going down at the Michelob Ultra Pitside Club. You can get tickets free in New York City. Look at the link under this YouTube, on this podcast, in the socials, in the notes. All I say is come be with us. Don't take a second of being with you for granted. Raw, you in New York City, reveal the biggest plan, other than obviously being...
That's the biggest plan, is to be together. But there's a couple of things on my list. I'm going to go see the Yankees against the Seattle Mariners. Looking for a lot of exciting things happening in the Mariners Academy these days, Rog. Looking forward to seeing their philosophy in play.
You're scouting for you under 7s.
They're going to try and hit the ball. That's what's going to happen. That's
Have
their
you been
philosophy.
To a baseball game?
Yeah, I've been to Yankee Stadium a couple of times and to wherever the Giants play in San Francisco. I wanted to go to the Mets, so I've never been to Citi Field. But it's the tickets were quite expensive, so I didn't.
They were.
The dynamic pricing is working for me with the Yankees. The dynamic pricing has gone a bit FIFA, so you can get into Yankee Stadium. So I'm going there.
Oh, you're going to go and watch the Mets, the Everton of New York City.
There was a Yankees-Mets derby over the weekend, wasn't there?
That's exactly what they were calling it.
That's what they call it.
Okay, we will get to the Club World Cup in one moment, but Raw, we are just, 4 days past the truly terrible news that has gripped the football world, the passing of Liverpool star Diogo Jota and his brother Andre, gone too soon. Diogo, just 28 years of age. And the response to this has been rippling through from his family out through Liverpool Football Club, the Liverpool fan base, just radiating way beyond football. We've seen AFL stars, we've seen in the Euros, we've seen every single goal celebrated almost with an homage to Diogo Jota. It's been incredibly beautiful, radiating out into the Women's Euros, probably the peak at the Oasis concert. Just an incredible live forever tribute. I've watched with marvel at each one. I mean, there's something about Diogo that he died a champion, the way he played football with a humility, a clinicality, the joy of a kid, that he just lifted the trophy amidst joyous scenes, gone on that bus tour, won the Nations League with Portugal, married his childhood sweetheart, and then just days later, it's all gone. It's almost as if the fragility of life has been ripped open for us all to see. Trauma, pain, and fear, all of it shared. I love the quote you had in your piece for The Observer, the Terry Pratchett line: "No one's actually dead until the ripples they cause in the world die away."
Yeah, I think it's an unbearably sad story, Diogo Jota, and I think that's why it's resonated so much with people, because every detail of it seems to deepen the tragedy. I guess it reminds us all kind of that there's a randomness at play, that there's no kind of build-up, there's no reason for it. It's just this horrible kind of tragic accident that happens, and for someone who'd had such a wonderful summer. He'd won the Premier League, he'd accomplished his professional goals, and then he has this wonderful moment with his family, a father to 3 young children. The idea of his parents losing both their sons, Diogo and Andre, is, I think, it's really hard to get your head around the tragedy of it, and that speaks to people. It reminds us, I guess, of losses we've had in our own lives. It reminds you of the cruelty that you can experience in life, even if it's not a cruelty on that scale. It's one of those things. It's a story so sad that I find it quite hard to look it in the eye, Rog, to be honest. I think it breaks your heart to think about it every single time. God knows what his family is going through. God knows what his teammates are going through. I think when you saw Ruben Neves and Joao Cancelo, both of whom are former teammates, Ruben Neves, one of his best friends from their time together at Wolves, Cancelo obviously his teammate from Portugal. When you saw them before Al Hilal's quarterfinal in the Club World Cup,
you couldn't believe they took the field.
I'm staggered that they'd made it onto the pitch. I think footballers do operate slightly differently. They will see that as the perfect tribute to him. Their view will be that Diogo would have played in that situation, and that is where they'll feel most comfortable.
I mean, that's often what footballers say. Many footballers will say, actually, on the field is where I feel my life is most together. I mean, Diogo Jota himself said that. The anxiety of life off the field, the pressure, the anxiety. He talked about how on the field, that is the place where he most felt himself, felt strongest, felt most at home. And I think for those footballers too.
Yeah, to be honest, this sounds silly, but I think the act of playing sport can be quite zen, regardless of whatever level you do it to. Once you're in a game, I can understand that you feel as though your complete focus is on that. And I think if you're going through, even in that first intensely burning pain of grief, I think you might seek solace in being able to just think about something else. But to see Neves and Cancelo before the game, you realise the scale of the pain they're in. I think it's a real test now, to an extent, for all of us around football, whether that's media, podcasters, fans, to treat the players who knew him particularly as humans and not as players. That's going to be really important. And that's not important for the return to pre-season training. That's important probably for years to come. Because to live through this is not something that you get over. It's a horrible tragedy that people will have to learn to live with for the rest of their lives. It's a scar that you wear, and it's a burden you carry.
And the Liverpool players are going to have to be in a place where these are footballers. They excel at football. They're going to have to mourn in public almost. Yeah. The beginning of next season for Liverpool, the defending the champion narrative is going to be like the 12th most discussed thing compared to this from day one. It's going to demand so much of, I mean, your point is going to demand so much of journalists in what they do ask and don't ask, the space that we can give. But for these players, my Lord, to have to mourn that agony and then work out how to communicate through it is almost unfathomable.
Yeah, I spoke to a friend of mine at Liverpool this week, who said that it's not just, obviously it will be difficult for the players. You don't know how the players will feel when they hear Jota's song. You don't know how they'll feel when they see his where he sat in the changing room. He will have had a place in the changing room. He will have a physical space that was his. You don't know how it will feel to be on the training pitch and he's not there. To see something that he would have found funny, to be back in a hotel on a road game where you had a particularly great time, because he was, that is quite a tight-knit squad, as most squads are. But Jota was, I think, one of the central figures in it. All dressing rooms tend to break down by like language cliques almost. That, you know, if you're Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz, you'll probably hang out together because you both speak Spanish. And that happens across football. Jota, I think, cut across those groups. He was the glue that held the squad together. It will be unfathomably difficult for them all season and for years to come, for those Liverpool players and for players like Neves and Cancelo, his Portugal teammates. It's testament, I guess, to the impact that he had, to all that he achieved, to the person that he was, which is more important than everything he did. But it will make it's difficult to know how we don't know how they will respond. They won't know how they'll respond. And whenever I've suffered anything that's caused me grief, the one piece of advice that I've always kind of thought was given to me, and I've always treated it as a gift, was that you have to be kind to yourself. And those players will have to be incredibly kind to themselves.
I want to unpack what you said, because there's a lot. I mean, the first of it is, part of this outpouring of grief has been, he was such a magical human being. He was such an incredible footballer. It's transcendent. On the field, we always joked he was an economist's dream. The clinicality with which he finished, I think, a 47% conversion rate, 65 goals in 182 days. Part of it is the realization, the hard, brutal. We will never see this man play again. And he was a joy, a human joy. We've always said football is at its best when it transcends football. But this is almost the polar opposite of this. This transcends football, but in the darkest of ways. And there's a realization that what has been exposed is the arbitrariness of life and death, the feeling of senselessness. Ultimately, life is deeply, deeply fragile. That's the true trauma. Jurgen Klopp, who is a man of incredible faith, I found that he captured it best when he began his post. He said, "There must be a bigger purpose, but I can't see it." That's what we're all grappling with. It's a football story in the shallower sense only. This is human life and existence that we're all, as football fans, left to grapple with.
Yeah, I guess if you're looking at it more deeply, you'd say that we tend, as humans, we function through story. That's how we explain the world to ourselves. This is not. It's hard to add this as a plot point. What doesn't make any sense. There is no, and it's because it's, like you say, Roger, it's arbitrary and it's random and it's cruel. And there's something incredibly like jarring and I think on like an existential level really unsettling about that, having that exposed to you, that look, this is all, like, we're not in control of this, like this is all contingent on just fate and stuff. That is really difficult to deal with. And because so many people, you feel as though you know footballers. I don't think I ever met Jota. I may have spoken to him in a mix zone or something, but you know, I never interviewed him. I never sat down with him. But I felt I knew his character. I felt I knew his character from his, like, the playful goal celebrations, the Gamer one and the Baby Shark one. You see videos. EA Sports always got him to do the player rating reveals at Liverpool, and you see these like videos that last 2 or 3 minutes, and he seems like a funny kind of, like an ordinary guy laughing at this kind of ridiculous situation, making jokes with his teammates. You get an impression of what they're like from what you see of them and from what they're like on the pitch. So you feel as though you've lost someone who, it's not just a name or a set of statistics. It's someone who exists in your imagination, someone who lives vividly in your head. And just out of nowhere, they're not there anymore.
And so that song, you mention it, "Oh, he wears the number 20, will take us to victory." And when he's running down the left wing, he'll cut inside and score for LFC. And of course, the song, "He's a lad from Portugal, better than Figo, don't you know? Oh, his name is Diogo." That song, Raw, is going to be sung for years, every game. And it's going to take on an almost, in the middle of a football game, the mundane, the thing that takes us out of ourselves, the thing that makes us forget. It's going to take on an almost religious significance at Anfield.
Yeah, and it'll be hard, I think, for the players to hear it the first few times. But I think that song will outlive me. I think it will be sung. It will now be a thing that Liverpool fans sing, and that is, in time, that will come to seem the most beautiful and most fitting tribute, I think. And it's testament to all that he did, all that he was as a player. And you'd hope that in years to come, that his family can find some solace in that, to know that he lived and made such an impact on so many people. It will not help now. It won't. There is nothing that will dull their pain now. But it's a sign of what he meant to Liverpool and to the fans, and that is, they will want to kind of commemorate that, and they will want to do that. I think forever, to be honest, for as long as games are played at Anfield, I think Jota's name will be sung.
The final point you made that I want to hear you talk about more is there is a moment of global connective impact in those moments too. When we mourn a celebrity or an elite athlete or a famous person passing, we mourn their loss, but we also refract it back on our own identities. You know, they in their life are expressions of the best of us, our dreams, our hopes, our sense of escape. We project so much on their actions. They unite us. They allow us to form a collective. They make us honestly feel so alive. I think part of watching Jota, you did feel alive when he was on the ball. We have the dream life. We have the memory. We have the experiences of watching him. They're now gone. The only thing I've seen like it here in North America is the loss of Johnny Gaudreau, who also died suddenly and senselessly with his brother in a motor accident. It is a human agony. But I think we also feel our own sense of loss in those moments. I know for me, 4th of July, the day after Diogo's passing, is the year anniversary of my dad's death. And I think I'm shocked mourning Diogo, but also fused it with my own personal sense of memory. We've had so many letters from listeners refracting on their own sense of pain, their own agony in their own lives. I mean, you've hit it about be kind to yourself. Losing Diogo feels like losing a friend to many human beings based on the letters we've got. All I'd say, you've said be kind. I urge anyone who's feeling these agonies to talk about it, ultimately to mourn, to let yourself mourn in these moments.
Yeah, you have to feel what you feel. And there's no point, I mean, this is very un-British of me, but there's no...
You're in America now, baby.
Yeah, you can't swallow those emotions. There's no benefit in telling yourself that it's stupid to feel it for a footballer, that you didn't know him, to say that, it doesn't, why do I feel like this? Because, most people will have experienced some form of loss. And as you say, whenever you're confronted with something that is so public, with someone who lived so large in our imaginations, as all footballers do, and they do that because of the emotions they make us feel. Diogo Jota, again, never met him, or didn't know him. Diogo Jota brought me intense happiness. There were times when I don't want to bring up the Derby goal, but the goal in the Derby was quintessential Jota. That was the Diogo Jota goal.
It's incredible. It was his last goal.
And it sounds silly to say that only he could have scored it. That's probably not true. But equally, if you'd shown me that goal with all the figures obscured in some way, I would have said that's Diogo Jota straight away. I would have known, even if you didn't tell me it was a Liverpool game, you'd have known that was a Jota goal. And the feeling of relief and joy and hope that gave me, that's real. And that will be true of millions of Liverpool fans all over the world. So they do live really large in our imaginations. We do feel a personal connection to them. They are part of our global, our landscape, our conceptual landscape. It feels like losing someone even if that doesn't make any sense. But you have to forget the fact that it doesn't make any sense, because the feeling is real, and you have to let yourself feel that, and you have to forgive yourself for feeling it. The other thing that I've always found really useful is that the burden that grief is never, and I don't know whether this is how you feel about it too, but certainly for me it helped. The burden that grief does not reduce in time, but you get stronger. And that, I think, is how it will be true of Jota. The connection that people felt to him, I think that is what will happen, is that you will be able to tolerate it more, but it will always be there, and accepting that it's always there is significant, I think.
And be kind to yourself is probably the most important thing we'll say. We're about to descend into talking about the Club World Cup, which is just hilarious. So I'll just say we wish Diogo's family strength and love at this time of unfathomable loss, to everyone at Liverpool Football Club, to all our Liverpool supporting GFOPs. You'll never walk alone. This is probably the worst pivot in Men in Blazers history, because we've got to get to the football. Not just the football, we're going to get to the Club bloody World Cup. Things got serious at the weekend, Raw. I mean, God bless football for being a complete diversion. It's never felt more like a diversion to me. I honestly found it very odd to watch. And we're texting about this a little bit. It's football with a multi-million-dollar incentive to win, which is not nothing, but no real jeopardy for losing. And it's almost a problem that this tournament has. There were players who really, really, really give a crap because that's who they are. It's nice to win. But you don't see that many players going home and just utterly seething.
No, there's been a little bit of sort of Bayern Munich bitterness, but more related to the Jamal Musiala injury. They didn't necessarily, cover themselves in. They weren't the most charitable in their assessments of that, which I guess suggests that they care to an extent. But I agree with you. It was during the Real Madrid-Dortmund game that we were texting. And look, the one thing I would say, it was very hot at MetLife. I wouldn't have wanted to be running around. And the Borussia Dortmund players didn't either. And I can understand that. And in many ways admire it, that they thought, look, it's July, it's really warm, I want to be on holiday, we're 2-0 down to Real Madrid. All right, I've never seen...
one of the Garcia brothers point to you and they're just like, chafing, lads. You're chafing.
I've never seen anyone...
Greatness, respect greatness in the chafing department.
Less happy to score a goal than Maximilian Bayer. It's not that he didn't celebrate it. It was that he actively tried to apologise to his teammates for, look, we don't want extra time, boys.
I know.
Sorry.
Straight to penalties, lad.
This is off topic, but of all the innovations they've made in the Club World Cup, ref cam, drinks breaks, the
individual
walkouts, which is great in the NBA, but less great in football because there's twice as many players in football.
By the way, the players will grow into it. It will be very soon. They'll be pulling the faces. It'll be more like World Wrestling. It will be... it's...
Entrance music would improve it.
It's a horrible experience right now. I've got a feeling this is not going to go away.
Of all the battles to be fought, I think the individual walkout is not something I will waste a huge amount of time on.
I watch it and I'm like, oh my God, if Neil Maupay ever gets to the Club World Cup, it's going to be just so awesome. Watching him walk out in just a pair of Speedos, give 2 Vs to the camera, will be amazing, and then, boom, it's going to be everybody's going to be doing bits.
But I'm amazed that they haven't gone for straight to penalties. That would be an obvious thing to do, just say there's no extra time. Don't play extra time, we'll just go straight to penalties. I think it does feel like football without true jeopardy, or it has so far. The test for FIFA is this week. It's what do the semi-finals look like? We said this
in last week's pod.
Yeah, that's true.
The test is the quarterfinals.
Well, no, actually, do you know, I don't even think it's the games. I think the real test, my theory at the moment, Rog, is the real test is what happens when someone wins it. Whoever wins it, FIFA desperately need them to do a bus parade. There has to be a parade. If there's no parade, the tournament's done.
Down the West Side Highway.
Not necessarily a parade here.
Staten Island. Yes, Unite for Real Madrid. It'll be amazing.
I think if Fluminense win it, if you get a Brazilian winner, they'll go home to Rio and there will be a full-on party, and that's fine. The European teams, I'm not so sure. They need they need the victory in it to feel like it means something. Otherwise, the tournament has a real problem.
Let's start in Atlanta. PSG 2, Bayern Munich 0. Club World Cup's marquee clash so far. Really a reheat of Champions League rumbles past. You called it decaffeinated Champions League. Bayern, though, they began full-on ristretto, if you want to keep in the coffee vernacular. It was frenzied at the outset, pressing, charging down both flanks. Elise purring, Kingsley Coman trying to torment his old team. Harry Kane nodding over where he'd normally finish. PSG marauding through Cavaradonna. I can't think of a footballer I get more excited about that's not named Illiman and Die. Game was fine. And I realised why it felt just fine, because so much of the action was actually quite thrilling. Raw, it's the sounder thing. It's like you weren't sure whether they're just not wiring up the audience or whether there was noise in the stadium, or it feels subdued. They almost needs the footballing soundtrack from COVID that they got from EA Sports FIFA to employ along with this thing. We'd all be singing its praises.
I think there's two things. One is, I don't know this. This is just a kind of working suspicion. The great innovation of the Premier League in its early years was that, the big fluffy, you'll know the words for these, the big fluffy mics by the side of the pitch. Are they called big fluffy mics?
The cuddly mics.
Cuddly mics.
I think we call them technically. I have no idea, but I love it. The mic muff. You're going to be writing into us. I don't know.
The Premier League, I think, weight those or whatever so that they pick up the crowd noise more than other leagues do, which is why Premier League games...
it's the best in the world.
It's why they...
Mic muff.
It's why it sounds like such an event.
Yeah.
Other leagues tend to think, well, you want to be kind of hearing the thud of the ball, but you don't. You want to hear the crowd. And it strikes me, what the games I've watched on TV, even when there's lots of people in the stadium and those people are Argentinian, the games sound really quiet. And that makes me think that something has gone wrong on some level with like the sound mix. And again, for 2026, they need to sort that out. The games need to sound proper.
Johnny, you need to get speed on it.
Do we think Speed is a sound engineer?
I
don't.
I think he's pretty into mic muffs.
I think the other thing is the type of fans in the stadium. So a lot of them, there will be a lot of people who've got tickets to go to a game and are not supporting either team, and that's fine. That's absolutely their right. There'll be a lot of people who are used to going to games as a kind of experience rather than an active participant in the kind of creation of atmosphere. And the other thing, this struck me even with the Palmeiras fans in Philly, they're even the ones who've come from Brazil, and lots of people have come from Brazil, it's not the fans in the Torcida, in the Mancha Verde, the ultras who lead the singing. It's the people who sit on the sides and get the better tickets, because obviously it costs a lot of money to get to the US. So I think what you have is a much more passive crowd rather than an active one. And that reduces the atmosphere.
Yeah, it feels often energyless in those stadiums. And then, the spectacle, the experience watching at home is a tiny percentage of what we're used to. And in the thrill of the game, that's absent. By the way, I was glad it was absent in the darkness of the game, because on the stroke of half-time, a moment of true horror. Musiala, back in his first game, I think in 3 months, tried to beat Pacho at the byline. Donnarumma just charged in headlessly, took them all out, bending Musiala's ankle into a horrific angle in the process. Bild reported he was left with a broken left fibula, damaged several ligaments, likely to be out for 4 to 5 months. When he realised what he'd done, Donnarumma keeled over in tears, realised the severity of the injury. Manuel Neuer, less forgiving, broke the goalkeepers' union post-game, lashing out at Donnarumma. He says, "This is a situation where you don't have to go in like that. That's reckless." He accepts the risk of injuring his opponent. Raw, I thought that was a little bit harsh. Rationally, though, I do understand the emotional agony.
Yeah, and to see your teammate go through something like that will make you kind of, angry, I guess. Especially if you feel that it's an unnecessary injury to suffer. But that said, I don't think there's any intent on Donnarumma's part. I think it's a dangerous game if you start kind of alleging that other players have been reckless, because I think all players make decisions at various times that are not necessarily the smartest in retrospect. I was slightly surprised by the strength of Neuer's comments. And to be honest, I'm relieved that Musiala is 4 or 5 months, because the injury looked so bad. You sort of think, look, the 4 or 5 months of rehab will be really difficult for Jamal Musiala, but it's 4 or 5 months. It's not a year, 2 years. He will be back and play again, which is something. And I suspect in the heat of the moment, maybe Neuer doesn't have that diagnosis, so maybe he thinks it's even worse. But I guess all we can do is say that we hope Jamal Musiala is back as quickly as possible.
Got to credit Bayern, because that kind of gruesome injury can completely knock the steam out of a team, particularly when they then have to go into the locker room and contemplate and process it together collectively. But they came out for that second half still with their intensity intact. But one of the things I love about this PSG team is just their ruthless clinicality in key moments. And I saw the opening goal coming moments before it did, out to the flank. Desiree Doué plays the game so effortlessly. I mentioned Joey Chestnut up top. They asked him how he does what he does. He said he goes for the perfect mix of calm and anger. That's Desiree Doué that he's just described there. The way he rolled that ball counterintuitively near post when Neuer was leaning to the far post, where I think almost everybody else would have hit it. It was just artfully stunning.
And there's something so smooth about Doué. He's such an elegant and such a graceful footballer. He's kind of arrived fully formed in our consciousness, hasn't he? He wasn't held up as a kind of particularly exciting signing the way that Kvaratskhelia was. They signed Kvaratskhelia, best player in Serie A, all that stuff. Doué, a kid who came from Rennes, a lot of money, a lot of people saying how talented he was, but you don't necessarily expect that level of performance straight away. And yet it now feels like he's up there with Lamine Yamal as kind of one of the most exciting prospects in the world.
Just about to be taken out of the game as well. That was his first goal since the Champions League final. PSG survived a late red to Pacho. then another to Lucas Hernandez, who elected to go elbow in the face to Guerrero late on. No one really cares about playing in this tournament, to be honest, but it mattered not. PSG kept PSGing. Dembele smashed the crossbar, then delivered a quite crushing finish after incredible work from Hakimi, an ecstatic end. By the way, I love Thomas Muller right at the end. I think one of the interviewers was asking Harry Kane whether he was sad that he lost, and Thomas Muller, finishing his career in phenomenal style at Bayern Munich, just shouted, "He's not used to winning trophies." Pete Muller to the end.
You're always on brand, Thomas Muller. He'll be missed. Thomas Muller, one of the great characters in European football, as well as a wonderful player, but just a funny, really different type of person to have around.
To MetLife in New Jersey, Real Madrid 3, Dortmund 2. New Madrid coach Xabi Alonso made a quite audacious decision, started 21-year-old breakout star, your friend Gonzalo Garcia, in the quarterfinal, despite Kylian Mbappé being back in the squad. Mbappé then had to look on with quite contrasting emotion on the bench when Gonzalo scored within 10 minutes. A goal taken with the confidence of an experienced poacher, fourth of the tournament. Ardagula setting him up. Garcia splitting the defenders, slashing home. Face on Mbappé. I think in Liverpool we call that kind of face on the bench, we call it arse slapped. Red arse slapped, actually, is what you call it.
But it's important for Mbappé that he's got a stand-in. It might not feel this way to Kiki just at the moment, but this is a good thing. It's a good thing that there is a young kid, 21, coming through Real Madrid's academy. Just a little bit of Raul about him, a little bit of a kind of poacher's touch. Gonzalo Garcia is not going to be in the press like agitating that Mbappé shouldn't start. Gonzalo Garcia is not going to be saying, well, they should move Kiki out to the left to accommodate me. He's got a replacement who can obviously score goals, who's got that nose for goal, who can stand in when Mbappe's injured or off form or to give him a rest. Kiki should be seeing the positives here.
And then 10 minutes later, another Garcia, another goal. Right back Trent setting up left back Fran Garcia, another fine finish. Another Madrid Youth Academy product, elevated by Xabi within his system. Alonso looking on from the bench. I love those missed things that made him look constantly like he was at some Scottsdale pool party. He's been managing now for 43 days. He's already got his dogs, as you say in America, his guys. They're all the Garcias. Is it Carlo Ancelotti heresy to say it looks like Xabi's already made Madrid look more clockwork, tighter in a tiny amount of time?
That's my other close personal friend, Thibaut Courtois, said that after the game as well. That
mouthful of cheesesteak.
We were in the Reading Terminal Market.
Yeah, lads. Geezers.
Yeah, he said that they're kind of learning the Spanish word that they use for them is like automatisms. Is kind of understanding, like automations, I guess. Yeah, they're kind of learning the things that Xabi wants them to do, the movements, the patterns. And their view is very much like this is a work in progress. We've had 43 days and like 6 games to figure out exactly what he wants. And we're kind of getting there. And I think you're starting to see it. I thought the first 25 minutes of that game, might extend that to the entire first half. I thought Real Madrid looked really good. They are getting there, but the comparison shouldn't necessarily be with Real Madrid of last season, because Carlo Ancelotti built several great Real Madrid teams. It looks like Alonso's taking them back to the level they were in 2024 or 2022, because the level they were at last season, this season, whatever it is, was much lower than it should have been.
This is comical. We have no idea who we are anymore.
I'm completely lost.
Dortmund couldn't lay a glove on Real Madrid, or so it seemed. They were so in control until they weren't. This was a game that honestly came to life right at the death. First, Maximilian Beer rifled home in the 92nd minute. Madrid first just seemed to swat them aside, and Mbappé going airborne to volley home, making a 20 with his fingers to one of Diogo Jota. But then Housen got honestly needlessly red carded for Dogzo, and a penalty ensued, smashed home, and then with the last strike of the ball, Sabic had chested and span, only to have a shot snuffed out by your friend Thibaut Courtois. I believe you call him T-Bants, is that your
T-Bants,
yeah.
T-Dog, whatever, yeah.
And Real Madrid proceeded just so they can face PSG. I mean, it is quite mouth-watering. Kylian Mbappé to face his former team for the first time in his career. If you're Xabi Alonso, do you start him? Or do you allow yourself to bring him off the bench, show maybe that you're in charge, you're running things, and you Garcia it?
That's a really good question, because you're not in charge. Florentino Perez is in charge, and he probably wants Kylian Mbappé to play. It's a big call for Alonso. Does Garcia's done brilliantly, and because of Mbappe's illness at the start of the tournament, the sporting logic is probably let him come off the bench, make an impact. He is still getting back to full fitness, but at the same time, this is the red letter fixture of this tournament. This is Gianni Infantino's great dream. PSG Real Madrid, not under the auspices of UEFA, but under the auspices of FIFA. It's what he wants. It will be the game that most people around the world, I think, engage with, even beyond the final, because of the way the draws worked out. From that point of view, there's probably a kind of business motive to say that Kiki has to start. But you're right, it's a big test of Alonso's authority.
Okay, Wednesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we have PSG, Real Madrid. Who's going to take it? What kind of game will it be? Because when I think about it, I do think about that clip that went viral of Luis Enrique sitting down a quite furious Kylian Mbappé and demanding that he start to play defensive football as well as attacking football. There's a lot of layers to this game.
Yeah, a lot of people have got a lot to prove, haven't they? Mbappé will want to kind of suggest to Enrique and to PSG that his move to Madrid wasn't a bit of a mistake. But PSG kind of need to showcase to Kylian that they've kind of moved on and actually they're not thinking about him at all in any way whatsoever. They're not bitter. It's fine. It's fine, Kylian. But the main thing that will define this game, Rog, is that it's being kicked off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of the week in New York in the summer. So I'm guessing that the main thing about this match is that for various parts of it, it'll be quite slow because everyone will be really hot and quite tired.
Maradona in the 1986 World Cup, which was in Mexico, and they had these daytime kickoffs also for European football viewing habits. When he went on the field for the first time, he said, "This is not football time, it's siesta time," which I just love in every regard. I've got to say, I believe in this PSG team. They got almost like Manchester City at their peak inevitability and the chance to show Mbappe that they do not miss him at all. John Oliver, for the 100th time, spite is the rocket fuel of human motivation. Back in time to Friday's game, Chelsea 2, Palmeiras 1. I did love the energy charging into this one. Palmeiras manager Abel Ferreira said, "Let's join together as Brazilians and Americans against the English on Independence Day." Raw, deep history bants are the best football bants, right?
Yeah, it's great. I suspect that to Estevan Willian and to Alan, not that Alan, not your Alan, he's the other Alan, he's the young Alan.
Bite your arm off for old Alan.
I think they are great students of the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I imagine Abel Ferreira just like tactically showing his players the Battle of Lexington, like pre-game, be like, "Lads, channel this spirit, Paul Revere, right, lads, let's rock this thing." Palmeiras, however, not really Paul revering it. No real press. Chelsea able to knock the ball around at will. They drew Palmeiras forward, then exploded in transition. 60 minutes. Cole Palmer, spam past one defender, cut inside the second, lashed home, low, true. First goal from open play for him since January the 18th. I will say Cole Palmer doing the chili celebration in 77-degree heat in Philadelphia was really a career moment.
But it does rhyme. Chile, Philly. Come on, that's what he's working with.
By the way, no one loves the dictionary of half rhymes more than Cole Palmer. It's one of his favourite pursuits, the rhyming dictionary on the internet.
It was a slightly half-hearted.
And he was almost embarrassed. He was almost embarrassed. That's what I'm saying.
Do I have to do this?
Yep.
Yeah.
He kind of walked around of trying to avoid doing it, and then I would imagine statistically this was his largest gap between scoring and unleashing the chili. So even he was like, "Lads, come on."
This isn't appropriate.
Yeah.
But it's what the people want. You've got to give it to them.
That's true. Bread, circus, chili celebrations. Second half got a little bit away from Chelsea. The midfield weakened by injury, suspension. An 18-year-old wonderkind, Estevao, arriving at Chelsea at the end of this week, just took control of the game, beat Sanchez. It was caught stealing, not like him, near post and high. Should have counted double for going in off the post. Estevao taught us a new law that we didn't know, Raw, that it's okay to celebrate against your future club that you're about to move to in a couple of days' time.
But it is the most Chelsea thing imaginable that they now have so many players on their roster that even the ones who score against them belong to them.
By the way, this is the future of football. I do think they're going to work out clearly how to win it all just by monopolising every single player in football.
They're going to have all of the players, and that way they will win because there will be no other teams. That is very clearly their plan. That's as good a logic as any. In many ways, though, it's perfect for Chelsea, though, isn't it? Because they played relatively well, they got through, and now they have the excitement of seeing this 18-year-old kid, who, if I'm honest, looks a little... I think he'll need to be treated very carefully in the Premier League. I think that he'll need a year or two to get fully up to speed, but he's clearly incredibly talented. And the way that he'd actually spoken quite a lot in this tournament about being nervous, about feeling as though there was a lot of pressure on him to deliver, to kind of live up to this hype. And for him to do it, especially in the second half of a quarter-final of a competition that we're not sure how much we care about, but still, it's a quarter-final, and the Brazilians definitely care about it. That speaks to kind of a maturity and to an ability to cope with that pressure. So that, I think, in many ways, that was what Chelsea wanted. They won. Their player scored a goal. The kid who they've signed looks really exciting. It's worked out beautifully.
The loan spell at Everton for Estevao is going to be. And talking about Everton, I mean, Chelsea laboured in this one. They needed João Pedro, new signing, to come on to give them some energy. The rocket fuel for the Brazilians really was their support in this one. Pedro, there was ballast. Gusto ended up finishing it. A deflected cross, somehow wrong-footed. Palmeiras' goalkeeper, the wonderfully named Weverton. I'm not making his name up in any regard. It was a Weverton own goal. Even when we're not in tournaments, Raw, we are destroying our fans' hopes. If that wasn't nominative determinism at work, I don't know what it was.
Yeah, Weverton is a great name for a goalkeeper. I don't understand that goal at all. Does it look like it was? It might have been one deflection. It might have been two, and it was. Knowing how much this tournament means to Brazilians is quite sad. But then if you are going to be called Weverton, you have to get used to disappointment.
He's Everton with a dubs. What surprised me in this one, final whistle, Maresca, just how much it clearly meant to him, throwing his arms up to the heavens.
I think people want to win. People like winning. People involved in professional sports are there to win.
You've seen that connection, haven't you?
And I've worked that over my many years covering football.
It's my big takeaway.
These people really want to win.
But he wants this. He wants. I mean, I've not seen that much, celebration. In this tournament, this is a man who, this is he's won things, conference things. This is like that next level, that habit, that.
Is that where we're positioning this tournament as above? Is already definitely above the Conference League?
I would think it's a shade above. I think it's a global Carabao Cup, isn't it?
The global Carabao. That's how they should market it.
And then the Florida Cup just above it.
Just above it. I think for Maresca, it's probably really important for his future job prospects, for his continued involvement in the Chelsea kind of craziness. Enzo Maresca could really do with being able to say he was the man who made them world champions. That would be quite helpful for Enzo Maresca. I understand why he is into it.
I love Cole Palmer's quote post-game. He said he went to speak to Estevao. I just said, we're excited for you to join. But he didn't understand a single word I said. These two are going to be like the best old ball buddy cop duo that the Premier League's been crying out for.
I think there's something really sweet about the fact that Cole Palmer thought he would go and speak to Estevao Willian, despite the fact that he must know on some level that he speaks no English.
It could be that Estevao actually speaks brilliant English.
Yeah.
He just didn't understand what Cole Palmer was saying at all.
Or maybe Cole Palmer said it in Portuguese.
Oh my God.
Imagine that.
That fits in when John Oliver last came on, we were talking about Cole Palmer. There used to be a Saturday Night Live sketch where whoever played Ronald Reagan pretended in public to be really like slow and asleep, and then the second the cameras are off him, he's like, okay, and he's like really astute, and he's like the boss of everything, just pretending to be like an old man. There is a theory for Cole Palmer that he's actually genuinely a hyper intellect kind of PhD level literature fiend, but he's just like playing all of us in an Andy Kaufman-esque kind of surreal spoof, I don't have a Spotify, what do you think when you take a penalty? He's like, I don't think of nothing, and then when he's like in the locker room, he's just reading Solzhenitsyn.
It's possible. Maybe he's worked out that the easiest life for him is to look like he's completely monosyllabic.
It's amazing. Yeah. God bless. I love this vision. Cole Palmer Book Club is just like, make it happen. In the other game, Fluminense beat Al Hilal in Orlando. Two incredible finishes. First from a Martinelli, who can score. Second from Streetwise Hercules, who can fight the rising odds. Just one goal before the tournament, now two in back-to-back knockout games. Amazing story for Fluminense. Just the age of some of their players. 44-year-old keeper Fabio and the great 40-year-old centre-back Thiago Silva. 84 years of experience between the two of them. I mean, that to me is just like the dream narrative of this entire tournament, watching those guys.
And it's really important to have a Brazilian team in the semis, because the Brazilians, not only do they take it seriously, unquestionably, if we were a Brazilian podcast, Rog, we wouldn't be debating how much people care about this competition. but they've added so much to the tournament, not just in terms of the teams they've beaten. Botafogo beat PSG, Flamengo beat Chelsea. You look at the fans they've brought, the colour they've kind of contributed. To have a Brazilian team in the semi-finals is really important.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we know in club football we're just cheering for spreadsheets. So this is one of the greatest fault lines for the Club World Cup, different to international football, which is just a lesser game. So there's ways to make up the skill gap. Ultimately, for a Brazilian team, the financial gap between them and the European teams is probably for a long time going to be too great to close. I think Chelsea's semi-final to lose, but who's going to win this thing, Rob? For me, heart says Fluminense, mine says PSG.
Well, I think Chelsea are favourites with the bookmakers, and I think that's because they've got the easier semi-final, so they're more likely to be in the final, whereas PSG Real is kind of a toss-up to an extent. I'd be the same as you. I think you're probably looking at a Chelsea-PSG final, and strictly speaking, PSG just are the best team in the world, rather than an endlessly changing collection of individuals. I think PSG probably win that.
One more note on the Club World Cup. FIFA have seen sense and started to slash the ticket prices. Club World Cup quarter-final, 4th of July, get-in price $6 for Fluminense Al Hilal. A very steep $17 for Palmeiras against Chelsea. Well, why didn't they just do this at the outset and avoid the humiliation of the, empty stadium waking optic nightmare?
Yeah, I've no idea. I mean, I think, to be honest, I think it's like $6 or $17 is probably a bit cheap. You probably don't want to be selling tickets for that much, because it makes it look like it's a tin pot competition. Why you wouldn't say, we need to make sure this is accessible, so let's set it at, from a British point of view, I'd say like $40 is a reasonable amount to charge for a ticket to a sporting event. I know that's why I'm not in dynamic pricing. But it strikes me as obvious that certainly early on, you should be able to tell how much the pickup is, and at that point you change. The fact that they've had to reduce it so much that it's gone so low, fine, maybe chalk it up to experience, but for the love of God, learn the lesson next summer.
By the way, I love your thing about dynamic pricing. It's like that line from The Graduate, what's the future? Plastics. It is. I wish I was in the dynamic pricing industry. It is incredible. Adam Crafton tweeted yesterday, the semi-final was forged. The Chelsea ticket was $473.90. By yesterday, it was $13.40. So if you brought immediately, you were paying 35 times. If you just waited that 24 hours. I will say, filling the stadia by giving the tickets away. I do wonder whether it gives UEFA second guessing about their dream of holding the Champions League final in the United States of America.
I think that's a massive thing, that the whole tournament, which again, I'm broadly pro Club World Cup. I think the concept holds.
Not just broadly, you're part of the big America Club World Cup lobby. You're it.
I think there'll be people at UEFA thinking, maybe this is trickier than we thought. Or they might be thinking, we have to work harder. We have to do more. The other thing I'd say is that I remember in Qatar in 2022, when just before kickoff, you'd get this massive rush of people coming into the stadiums because they'd gone outside and given the tickets away. They'd got volunteers, they'd got anyone they could find to go into the stadiums. Obviously, the organising committees denied this, FIFA denied it, but it was obvious what was happening.
For the Qatar games, they shipped in ultras from, was it Lebanon?
Lebanese ultras.
Yeah. That's what we should be doing here. Is this where you're going? America, get smart. Lebanese ultras is the future.
They are available for hire. No, I think there is a pattern here of these events. We are making them too expensive. You need the colour. The thing that from the Club World Cup that has sold me on it, and the thing that you could have sold to Europe and to the US, is go and experience what it's like to be at the Bombonera. Go and experience what it's like to be at River Plate or at Palmeiras or at Fluminense. You're selling an experience. If you say to people you have to pay $400 for that experience, they won't do it. Fans make football. Stop making these events too expensive for normal people to go to.
Amen. Okay, we are living transfer window live, people. That's why we watch, not to go to the games, but to talk about who's going to come in and disappoint us. Honestly, days in which it feels like Twitter was only invented just so that on the daily, Chelsea could tell us the latest player that they scored, but Arsenal beginning to bare their teeth. They signed $68 million plus intelligent midfield wonder Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad. Finally, Brentford's powerhouse Christian Norgard poised to join Miraculously, Noni Madueke terms discussed. Also, Gyökeres, ... coming. But the Arsenal story I do want to get your read on, Raw. It's actually a very dread-filled one. News came out this weekend after 3 years of being unable to name Thomas Partey as the, quote, Premier League star under investigation for alleged rape because of English privacy laws. It's been announced, even though everyone knew, that Partey's been charged with 6 offences against 3 women between 2021 and 2022. The Athletic reported since his first arrest in July 2022, Thomas Partey was arrested, questioned by police, bailed 7 times while still playing for Arsenal. So we know Arsenal would have known all of this was going on, but they kept playing him. Arteta constantly gave the player support, talked obliquely about, quote, all he's been through. For his part, Partey, through his lawyers, says he welcomes the opportunity to finally clear his name. But Raw, legally, Arsenal may have played this right, but morally, it doesn't feel like anyone's really thought this dread-filled situation through at all. I mean, they now risked enormous reputational damage in the pursuit of victory. I mean, it's a situation that really could unspool and almost destroy everything.
Yeah, I think their defence would be that until someone is charged, convicted, it is legitimate to treat them as innocent until proven guilty. I think, to me, I've got to admit, to me, that feels convenient. You don't have a right to be a footballer. We've seen in previous incidents where footballers have been charged with serious offences, that their defence is always, well, I have a right to work. And you do have a right to work. You do not have a right to be an idol to millions of people. That's not a thing. You can, it might be your trade. Maybe you have to learn another trade. If you have done something which means that you shouldn't be held up as a public figure, who was admired by young children, by fans, maybe you don't get to be that. And to me, I would have thought that once it became clear that these allegations were not going away, that there was a genuine investigation into it, I'm sure Partey protested his innocence. I'm sure he will continue to protest his innocence. But I think Arsenal or any club in that situation, you can just say, well, look, we're just going to wait this out. So you are suspended on full pay until we know what the situation is. There have been instances at other clubs where as soon as the allegation has been made, the player has just not appeared anymore. And because of English privacy laws, you can't name them. Even now, I'm slightly nervous, Rog, because according to English contempt law, I'm not allowed to talk about this as a member of the esteemed British media. There is something in my training that says just don't touch it. Thomas Partey's been charged. You're not allowed to talk unless you want to risk kind of bringing the trial into contempt, which can collapse a trial. And in the case of any crime, but particularly sexual offences crimes, that's really dangerous. But I think it is surprising to me that Arsenal didn't say, at some point, when he was continually being arrested and interviewed under caution by the police, we think it's best for everybody if you are just removed from the public.
Particularly as Arsenal have been such pioneers on the women's side of the operation. It's almost unfathomable. And I know a lot of their fans have been left reeling in terms of the conflictive feelings that have been triggered by this dark story. But enough, let's move, let's finish and close. We have a letter from a GFOP. First of all, I want to thank all of you for keep sending your foreign players whose names sound even more amazing in English. At JT Cole Comedy on YouTube wrote Juan Cuadrado. Do you know this one? This one.
John Squared? Yeah,
Johnny Square, which is like the coolest name of... Oh, man, can you imagine that in high school in the 1980s? Hey, there's Johnny Square. But here's a letter for the day from Steph Layden in Columbus, Ohio. Raw, do the honours.
So Steph writes, I want to thank you both for all you do for football in America. I am saying that as someone who has just had their first bite of Terry's chocolate orange because of you guys. Now, strictly speaking, Roger, I'm not sure that's to do with football. That's just me recommending good chocolate. It was life-changing. Not surprised it can be. Also weight gaining, just as a warning. Here's what I want to know from me, Rory.
0 calories, by the way.
The Gold Cup has just finished. It has, in an unfortunate defeat for the United States. We heard from Rog with Clint Dempsey all summer long. But what does Mauricio Pochettino look like from the perspective of the English media? How do they view how he is doing, or what he is doing? What does he look like? Is he speaking to you all still as English journalists on or off the record? Answering that wouldn't necessarily make it off the record. What does he seem like from the perspective of 3,000 miles away across the Atlantic? Courage, Stephanie.
Steph, thank you for making it very clear you've heard enough from me. So, Raw, she's quite right. I'm going to hand this one over to you. I did see the BBC on their website had an article. Is Pochettino delivering hope or panic to the US after the Gold Cup loss? Those are the only two possibilities. It's just either got to be hope or panic. There's nothing in between.
There's nothing in the middle. Those are the two emotions that we have.
By the way, definitely, from an English perspective, they're really hoping for one of those options, not for the other. But we'll take it away.
I think there's like a hierarchy of fame in this. So because we know Pochettino he's more high profile in England than any of the players, and more high profile than we think about Mauricio Pochettino more than we would ordinarily think about the US national team. I think there is an assumption that anything that goes wrong is maybe not his fault. That there's maybe a slightly patronising, I don't want to speak for England, like a slightly patronising view that he is a more high-profile coach than we would expect the US men's national team to have. Therefore, they must be lucky to have him. Therefore, if it's going wrong, it's probably not on him. But that said, like the English insularity, which occasionally, Rog, we might play up just a touch. I think the idea that the US should be better than they are or have been, that is something that is accepted within kind of English football culture, that there is an awareness that the bulk of the team either play in the Premier League or the Champions League, that there is quality there, and that therefore it's not unreasonable for the US to look at next summer and think we maybe should be aiming for last 16 quarterfinals, something like that, as host nation, main host nation. So I think there is maybe it's not entirely a free hit for Pochettino from an English perspective. If
Poch fails here, speaking of dark scenario, and we do not make it out of the group, does this blemish him, or can he walk away from the wreckage unscathed and be like, those losers?
No, I don't think he can. I think when he first took the job, I think that to me it struck me that might be part of his thinking, that he'd kind of go to the US basically as a placeholder and then come back after 2026. Back into Europe and probably walk into a relatively high-profile job. I think if it goes really badly wrong, especially after Chelsea and especially after PSG, I think that maybe does impact how he's seen in Europe. It's not a free hit. We are kind of watching. He still, in answer to Stephanie's question, he does still have a relationship with the English media in general. He's a really nice guy, Mauricio Pochettino. He's always been very kind of forthcoming to the journalists who've covered him regularly. As the person who did his first ever interview in England, I've always had a special, like,
a lot of humble brags,
warm place in my heart.
Garcias, T-Bants,
special warm place in my heart for Mauricio Pochettino, who I know better even than T-Bants. So I think he does talk a little bit. I don't think he's not like doing briefings and stuff particularly, I don't think. But he might be kind of...
Does he seem happy, Will?
It depends how many lemons he has around him. That's what he needs. He needs lemons to absorb negative energy.
The answer is never enough lemons. Steph, thank you for your magical letter to better days ahead for all of our boys. We are 338 days away from the World Cup, Raw. We have so much to fix in this men's team at every single level. But I want to end on a happier note. I do want to thank you. It's a joy to be with you here in the flesh. Honestly, you are the embodiment of the connective joy that I do feel through football. Thank you for being with us, you beautiful human being.
It's a pleasure. It's great.
This is a big week. Come and watch the Club World Cup semi-finals with Raw and me in Manhattan. See the chafing live and in the flesh. Come and raise a beer with us. RSVP in the show notes to come and give us a hug. We'll be taping live shows before and after every single game this week. Keep emailing in your dogs and your cats, your letters, your questions, your chocolate orange affectations at meninblazers@gmail.com. They give us incredible joy. As I said, 338 days until the World Cup. Let's savour each one, Raw. You're a beautiful human being. You're Crown Prince of Harrogate.
We've got to do a deal with chocolate orange, Rog. This is getting ridiculous.
God, you're not there. I'm working on it every single day. 12 mentions guaranteed. It's Rog sending you big love. Let's not take a second and watching football together for granted. And courage.